revival and spreading like a wildfire in my heart. Sunday morning, hallelujah, and it's lasting all week long. Can you hear it? Can you feel it? It's the rhythm of a gospel song. Oh, once you choose it, you can't lose it. There ain't nothing, any reason else to worship. I've got an old church choir singing in my soul. I've got a sweet salvation and it's beautiful. I've got a heart of glory 'cause I've been restored. There ain't nothing gonna steal my joy. No, there ain't nothing gonna steal my joy. When the valleys that I wander turn to mountains that I can climb. Oh, you are with me, never leave me. Oh, there ain't nothing gonna steal my joy. I got an old church choir singing in my soul. I got a sweet salvation and it's beautiful. I got a heart overflowing 'cause I've been restored. There ain't nothing gonna steal my joy. No, there ain't nothing gonna steal my joy. Keep it going, here we go. Clap your hands and stomp your feet till you find that God's gonna meet all you'll ever need. All you'll ever need. I've got an old church choir singing in my soul. I've got a sweet salvation and it's beautiful. I've got an old church choir singing in my soul. I've got a sweet salvation and it's beautiful. I've got a heart overflowing 'cause I've been restored. There ain't nothing gonna steal my joy. No, there ain't nothing gonna steal my joy. Oh, there ain't nothing gonna steal my joy. Great job, ladies. It's hard to get to that level and then have to do announcements. All right, we got to do them. Here we go. Poinsettias are now available. In fact, they're already here. So if you are interested in placing one in honor or memory of someone, this was in your bulletin today, and they're also extras on the welcome stand. So after today, if you need one, they'll be on the welcome stand, and they are $12 each. And then the Sunday before Christmas, you'll be able to take these home with you. Small group leaders will meet today at 6 p.m. at the First Lady's house and pastors. So we'll be there at 6 p.m. Small group leaders. Finance committee will meet next Sunday. That's a week earlier than normal, so please make note of that, Finance committee. You'll be meeting next Sunday on December 2nd. Secret Sister Banquet is also next Sunday at 6 p.m. in the kitchen, right? In the kitchen back here. So 6 p.m. next Sunday, Secret Sisters. The Tour of Churches, which is an annual event in the county here, is December the 4th, so it's just a few weeks away. And it's over on our side of the river this time, Bill. It's Buffalo, Blacksburg First Baptist, and Hopewell. So you'll begin at Buffalo at 6, end up at Hopewell with a meal there. If you've never been, you may want to take advantage of that. Thank you for helping us with Operation Christmas Child. We had a total of 178 boxes. You can clap there. Which I think is exactly 100 more than last year, so more than double last year. Thanks to all those that helped with that. Linda Cox actually was over that, so thank you to her specifically. All right, let's have a word. Lord, we thank you again for this opportunity to be in your house. Lord, we just thank you for the joy that we have in you and the ability to come in here and just worship freely and express that joy with one another. We just pray that you be with us today, be with our service, help us to honor and glorify you in all that we do. For it's in your name that we pray. Amen. If you are here for the very first time, there's a visitor's card in the pew back in front of you. If you'll fill that out for us and remain seated, our church family is going to stand and shake hands. Let's greet our guests.
these tithes and gifts. In Jesus' name we pray.
Through the eyes of man, it seems there's so much we have lost. As we look down the road where all the prodigals have walked, one by one at the end
great to come into the Lord's house and worship together. I hope you worship by yourselves sometimes, but it's good to worship together. Well, we're going to do something a little bit different today. Let me just say a word to some of you who are maybe new to our Southern Baptist Zion, as Dr. Criswell used to call it. Every year at Christmas time, we receive a foreign mission offering, which seems like, to some people, it's a horrible time. We're spending all of our money on presents. Why would you try to get us to give mission money at Christmas time? Well, in the wisdom of Lottie Moon and Annie Armstrong and those early women who supported Moon as she was a missionary in China, they thought this was a great time to do it. Well, this is when we think about the gift that God has given us, and that we should be supporting those who are trying to take the gospel word to people in other places. So every year we receive the Lottie Moon Christmas offering. I can remember not being always of this Baptist Zion. The first time I heard that name, I thought, that sounds loony. What's a Lottie Moon? Lottie Moon was a little woman who was probably about 4'11", and she went to Southern Seminary and felt the call to be a missionary. Was engaged for a time to a guy named Crawford Toy, who began to depart from the faith and take on liberal theology. And so she broke off that engagement. She never married. She went to China and she spent her whole life there. In the end, things were very bad in China. There was famine, and she wouldn't eat her food. She gave it all to the Chinese, and finally they put her on a boat to bring her back to America, and she died. But she has been an inspiration for Southern Baptists for a long time. And so every year we remember who she is, hopefully, and we remember what she stood for and how she died. And so through the month of December, you've got envelopes out here, and we hope that you'll remember the greatest gift that's been given to us is the Lord Jesus. And I hope we'll be so grateful for that we would want to see people who've never heard His name yet get to hear it. And so we're going to talk about a missionary story, a missionary tale. Boy, you just learned so much. First of all, I'm taking a text today that this is part of our Wednesday night study. We're going through Acts while we're going through Romans on Sunday. I hope it will whet some of your appetite to come on Wednesday night and be in our Bible study. We really have a good time. We learn a lot. Don't we, Wednesday nighters? Yes, sir. All right. So we're in Acts 16, and we're going to look at a missionary journey. And then I'm going to show you a map of it. Acts 16. We're going to read verses 6 through 10. And they went through the region of Phrygia and Galatia, having been forbidden by the Holy Spirit to speak the word in Asia. And when they had come up to Mysia, they attempted to go into Bithynia, but the Spirit of Jesus did not allow them. So passing by Mysia, they came down to Troas. And a vision appeared to Paul in the night. A man of Macedonia was standing there, urging them and saying, "Come over to Macedonia and help us." And when Paul had seen the vision, immediately we sought to go on into Macedonia, concluding that God had called us to preach the gospel to them. So, Paul is on a missionary journey. This is his second missionary journey. Can you do the math? Let me show you something. This is the church in Syria where Paul ministered. It's where Barnabas ministered. This is where, for the first time, Greeks with no background of the Jewish religion in Antioch, in Syria, got saved. And so the church in Jerusalem sent Barnabas to check this out, and he found out these were real Christians, and so they planted a church there. Things got so busy that Barnabas left Antioch and went to Tarsus and got Paul and brought him back, and they ministered there together. From here, they're called to their first missionary journey. Their first missionary journey was this. They left Antioch. They sailed down here to Cyprus. It's about 90 miles, 100 miles across there. There's a major city on each end. And they preached all the way across here in every synagogue. And had some tremendous things happen there. And then they sailed up into this area. And they went to all these churches up here in this area. Antioch of Pisidia, Iconium, Lystra, Derbe. Paul was run out of town in almost all these places, and when he finally got to Lystra, he was stoned. They thought he was dead. He went on to Derbe and planted a church here, had believers here. He's this close to home, but he doesn't go home. He can walk. He turns around and he goes back and he revisits and he strengthens every one of these churches. And he does it over and over. Every missionary journey, he goes back to make sure the churches hold. Then they came down here, worked this area a little bit, and they sailed back to Antioch. Now this is his second missionary journey. He's gonna leave this time not on a boat, he's walking. This is Paul's hometown of Tarsus. They're gonna walk up here and they're gonna visit again and strengthen all these churches at Derbe, at Lystra, at Iconium, and back up here to Antioch. But then they just start traveling. They want to plant new churches. And so as they're going along here, look here at all of Asia over, they said, well, let's go into Asia. But somehow the Lord communicated to them, I don't want you to go to Asia. We don't know how. If it was, we talked about this Wednesday night, if he just let them know in their spirits, we don't know if he just by circumstances blocked it where they couldn't go. But they couldn't go and they knew it was God. So they said, well, if we can't go to Asia, they travel on. Well, here's Bithynia. This is a great place because there's lots of Jews who have been settled in this region for a long time. And his main method is to go to these places, go to the synagogues, preach Jesus, get a beginning and go. But when they try to go in there, no, the spirit of Jesus would not let them go. And this goes on for 400 miles, and they're walking. Well, they're working as they go. We know from later letters that they're working on this journey, but they're hedged in. They can't go to the right, they can't go to the left. So they just keep going. Finally, they get down to Troas, and when they're there, God gives him a vision. Paul sees it in the night. Now, it's not a dream, it's a vision. And he sees a man from over here in Macedonia, and the man says to him, come over here and help us. And the Bible says that they immediately got ready to go. Now let me tell you what's happening here. They can't go to Asia, and they can't go to Bithynia because God is working in Macedonia, and he has people prepared for the gospel there. What's happening? God has hedged them in. He's got people ready to hear and receive the gospel, and he's making sure the person that has the gospel gets there to preach the gospel. And so, this Wednesday night, we're going to talk about, well, what happened to all these poor Asians? And what about these poor Bithynians? I know. But I'm not telling you today. But listen, God has Paul on a mission, and he's making sure he gets him where he wants him to be. Guess what's fixing to happen here? Huh? We're leaving the continent of Asia, and we're going to the continent of Europe, which is why you have the gospel. That's important to you. I mean, this doesn't look that far, but this is huge here. And they go up here and land in Neapolis, and they go to Philippi, and this is where our story takes place today. But let me ask you something about this vision. What's different about this vision? Compare this vision to Isaiah's vision in the temple. What does Isaiah see in the temple? He sees the Lord high and lifted up. His train fills it. And the seraphim, and all this stuff. And he cries out, Isaiah's crying out, woe is me. That's right. But then God says, who can I send, or who will go for me? And he says, here am I. And so we have out of that a huge part of the Old Testament because Isaiah wrote on. Well, how is this vision different than Paul's vision on Damascus Road? What happened to Paul on Damascus Road? Who appeared to him there? Jesus did. And what did he do? He told him he was going to be an apostle, he was going to suffer, and he was going to go for him. What's missing in this vision, in this passage? Huh? He didn't see Jesus, he saw a man. In this vision, there's no God. There's just a man. Now, we know that God sent the man in the vision, but what Paul sees is just a man. And the man is saying, come over here and help us. Come over here and help us. I want you to understand something about missions. There's so much that goes on in organizations and all the stuff that you have to do to be a sending agency. But listen, missions is not mission organization. It's not missions sending organizations. Missions are about this man who needs help. We do lots of stuff to get help to him, but it's about this man. It's like Operation Christmas Child. There's so much stuff that goes on. To getting boxes, getting them packed, get them shipped, get them out there to where they're going to be. But that's really all about, there's a child out there somewhere who needs Jesus. And so they're the mission, to get the gospel to the children. And so the first part of this message is just this: the cry was human. It was a man. Now he's a representative man. He says, "Come over here and help us." So he is a man, and he's crying out for somebody to come and help us. Listen, if he's a representative man today to the lost of the world, then he represents over 4 billion people that need the gospel. There are no circumstances where the church can say, well, it's time for us to ease up on this when we've got 4 billion people on this planet that don't know Jesus, and still many of them know nothing about Jesus at all. It's an amazing thing how God works here. When God calls us to something, then God is always preparing something. We'll talk about that as we go along. But I'm just thinking about this. This man over here calls out for help. This man lives in probably the most advanced civilization that the world had ever known in its time. He's going to Philippi. That's named after Philip, who was the father of Alexander the Great. Both of them warriors. Both of them took this Greek culture and tried to take it all over the world. And this place is magnificent in every way. In architecture, in learning, in science, in philosophy. We still go over there to look at their architecture. We go to the Parthenon just to see the Greek structure over there. I had a friend a few years ago that went to Athens, and he got to go up on the Areopagus on Mars Hill where Paul preached to all these wise people. And he talked about when he walked up there and he stood, you have all these tiers of seating, where the people would sit to hear the orator speak. And he just talked about how it felt to stand there, and he knew Paul stood here on this place and preached. Their art, everything was just tremendous. And they were not irreligious. They had 30,000 gods. They had the Parthenon. They were just stocked with gods, and they had all this stuff. And with their worship, they had all this great pageantry, and it was beautiful stuff. But yet, here is a man in Macedonia crying out, somebody come help us. I'm going to tell you something. When I thought about how advanced they were, I thought about our country. I think about the West today. We have got the best of everything. We have got the most of everything. We're advancing at such a rate of speed in artificial intelligence and all kinds of stuff, it scares the dickens out of me. But in the midst of all this, we are the lostest we've ever been. And we would say about these people, we'd say today, our people are just, they're not interested in God, they're not interested in anything, and we're never going to reach them. I heard a story one time about a guy he was a beggar back in the day when there was no kind of safety net. And he was as wretched as you could be. His clothes were just rags and falling off of him. He could barely hold his clothes together not to be indecent in public. And he's sitting out here on the roadway, but he's not saying anything. He's just sitting there. And this guy came by and said, man, you are in pitiful shape. Why aren't you begging? And the man said, I am begging with 1,000 tongues. I want to tell you something. Don't you write this country off. It's empty and it's dead, but it is begging with 1,000 tongues. Somebody help us. Somebody help us. I read about Silicon Valley and the lives these people live. They're just awash in money. And they're living the most perverted lifestyles you can imagine. Things we couldn't even talk about here today. But you know what that is? That's searching. Where's my meaning? I've got all of this. Where's the meaning in life? And it's nowhere for them to find. except Jesus. Listen, these Macedonians didn't need secular help. They didn't need political help. They needed spiritual help. And our world needs spiritual help. Our country needs spiritual help. So we have to keep putting forth the gospel. Because there's people out here, in these masses of people that we think are paying no attention. They are empty and they know that. And that creates an openness for the gospel. So, this cry was human, and this cry was for help. Come over here and help us. Which means our Macedonian was aware he had a need. We need help over here. Come help us over here. I think everybody outside of Christ is conscious of some kind of a felt need in their life. There's an emptiness that no amount of money, no amount of travel, no amount of recreation ever fills. You're happy as long as you're playing at whatever you play at, but as soon as it's over, you're back to dead inside, empty inside, unhappy. This man was conscious of a need. But the second thing he's conscious of, as he stands here in the vision, he was conscious that Paul and those people who were Silas, now Luke has just joined them. They picked up Timothy in Lystra. That's their group now. But he's sure that these are the people that have what they need. And so, he was right. It's an amazing thing. I don't care where you go, there's lostness. There's lostness in all the great urban centers. I don't know what it is about putting people together, but the more of you put together, the worse they get. God bless country living. I'm just glad y'all got back from New York. You know where you were. but it's true. Listen. But listen, there is so much lostness in these great urban centers today. But listen, there's a great amount of lostness in the jungle. There's a great amount of lostness in the deserts. There's a great amount of lostness in the islands. And guess what? They're all lost the same way. They're all lost because they don't have Christ. But guess what? Here's what's amazing about the gospel. You take all the cultures, all the people, all the races, everything. The same gospel works the same way to change their lives and make them whole in Christ. We just have to get the gospel to them. And third, this cry was urgent. Help us. Help us. Urgent. I thought about it this week. We see urgency when we have hurricanes. We see urgency when we have floods. We have seen unbelievable urgency in those fires in California. I was reading about something this morning. A guy that actually lived through it, stayed there. But listen, when those things happen, a cry goes out and we start gathering people to go as fast as we can. Tragically in California, fast as we can could never be fast enough when it's going through hundreds of acres in a minute, you know? But there's this urgency because we know if we don't get there, a lot of good people are going to die that are just like us. They were just living in their home, and all of a sudden, here's a hurricane. They were living life, and there was a flood. Or in California, there was a fire. In a few minutes, burned down a town bigger than Gaffney. Just took it. But we have this sense of urgency because this is going to take lives. Listen. Come over here and help us, men. We face eternal doom over here. Help us. Help us. People are dying every day that we can't get back. Help us now. It was urgent. And it's urgent that we be involved in getting the gospel out to people. We have a much greater sense of urgency when it's a natural disaster taking place, because it's something where it's here, we see. We need to pause and think every once in a while about the tragic circumstances of the masses of lost people on this planet today that need the gospel. Here's what Paul said in Romans 10, verse 10. Speaking about, this is the only thing that works. Nothing else works. For with the heart one believes and is justified, and with the mouth one confesses and is saved. For the Scripture says, everyone who believes in him will not be put to shame. For there is no distinction between Jew and Greek, for the same Lord is Lord of all, bestowing his riches on all who call on him. In the urban centers, in the jungles, in the deserts, in the islands. Verse 13, for everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Isn't that awesome? Not so. Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. But then Paul throws in verse 14. How then will they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how are they to believe in him of whom they have never heard? And how are they to hear without someone preaching or telling? Hey, listen, that's the urgency of missions. Fourth point. They heard and they went. They acted. They immediately went. It's amazing to me to watch how God has orchestrated this. Do you think that Paul is the only person that God ever orchestrates things in his life to get him where he wants him to be? And orchestrates things in the lives of people to get them ready? No. God is sovereignly at work in all things all the time. All things work together for good. How? Because God's working. God is working. This is an amazing thing. They went. They got on a ship, got across the water, they got to Neapolis, and they got to Philippi. And they're there, it just says, for several days. Now, Paul always goes to a synagogue. But guess what? Apparently, they didn't have a synagogue in Philippi. But he's there long enough to hear, but there's a group of women who meet outside the city by the riverbank for prayer. These apparently are Gentile proselytes to Judaism. And so he goes there to speak to them. We'll pick this up in verse 12. Let me read, I'm not sure they even have this, but from there to Philippi, which is a leading city of the district of Macedonia and a Roman colony. We remained in this city some days. Now, verse 13. And on the Sabbath day, we went outside the gate to the riverside, where we supposed there was a place of prayer, and we sat down and spoke to the women who had come together. One who heard us was a woman named Lydia from the city of Thyatira, a seller of purple goods. She's a businesswoman, and she's not poor, because purple is expensive. I think I told you, it took about 8,000, I think, of those little fish to get enough that stuff to make a gram of purple dye. Expensive. That's why kings wore it. The super wealthy wore it. She's a dealer. Who was a worshiper of God. The Lord opened her heart to pay attention, my translation says. New American Standard says, called upon her heart to respond to what was said by Paul. And she was saved because then it says, and after she was baptized. And her household as well. Then she urged us, saying, if you have judged me to be faithful to the Lord, come to my house and stay. And she prevailed upon us. So here, first place they go, they preach. Here's this woman named Lydia. The Lord opens her heart to respond. She's saved gloriously. Her household is saved. And then she asked these guys to come. You come and stay in my house. So now they've got a base of operation to work from. And then it will become a church. We'll meet there. Listen. God kept Paul hedged in, till he got him where he had a people prepared. And when he got there, everything worked. Have you ever had an experience like that? You ought to go on a mission trip or take a responsibility, and all of a sudden, God just worked everything. I've had a couple of things. One was in 1995, thereabouts. I was coasting along. We started a church. And I heard that our director of missions was trying to put together a mission trip to Russia. And I don't know why, out of all the things, that just struck me, and I knew immediately, I got to go. Now, I don't know if because I grew up in the age of nuclear war, but we were always, Russia was our enemy, and we had to be ready to get under our desk at school in case they bombed us. I don't know. But it just struck me how What an incredible privilege that we could get in that country today and preach the gospel. So I wanted to go. I've told some of the story before, but we ended up, there was 9 of us from my church went. We had a guy come in and talk to us. I had no idea anybody was going. They wanted to go. In a congregation just like this, I had wives get up and their husbands had no idea what they were fixing to do. And they came forward in the service and committed to go to Russia. It was amazing. Some of these women had hardly ever been out of the county. Really. Or out of their state. It was right there in their little world. And they felt like they could go to Russia. And so we went into training for that, and what you could and what you couldn't do, and all this kind of stuff, and we went to Russia. And it's an amazing thing. I mean, once we got there, there were hundreds, I guess, but we were spread out all over Russia. But we went to Stavropol. They broke my group in and made 2 groups out of it. Our youth minister took half of them, I took half. And they went one place, we went another place. But from the time we got there, everything was in place. Everything worked. We didn't ever have a minute to waste. The Russians that were there, waiting on us to get there, where we went, had been working like everything. They had appointments set up from early till late every day where we could share the gospel. Everywhere we went, people just came, packed out apartments and packed out auditoriums like this. The Gideons that got there, we had Bibles everywhere. We're giving out Bibles. I can remember standing in an auditorium like this, and I'm grabbing Bibles and I'm handing out, and people are just grabbing and grabbing. They never had a Bible of their own, ever. And they weren't going to miss their chance. I had the best of interpreters, translators. Some places they had to go out and try to hire people. It was perfect where I was at. Perfect. There was work to be done everywhere. They had all these preaching stations where they were working. It was an odd thing in Russia. This one place was different than everybody. The Russian Christians who lived under communism all those years, it's like, even though the wall came down and the restrictions were removed, they still lived like they were still there. They couldn't shake it. Very fearful. This lived. The people in Russia had all the symptoms that abused people have. That have been just severely abused overall. That's where they lived. They wouldn't look you in the eye. They walked down the sidewalk. They didn't want to make eye contact with anybody. But where I was at, they were out there and out there and out there. So when I got back home, Mr. Rich go, do you 2 weeks, and well, maybe we'll go to Panama next year. It's that kind of stuff, I'm going to tell you something. Paul, watch this in Paul. Paul is going and trying to preach everywhere in him. He's trying to preach. That's the way we ought to be. Paul, on this trip, God doesn't let him go someplace, but Paul is out here. He doesn't know. He's trying to preach to anybody and everybody he can, and that's the way we ought to be. Should you go on a mission trip? Yes. Is it different sometimes? Yes. Some people go on a mission trip every year, never go back, somewhere else, somewhere else, somewhere else, somewhere else. But when God is doing something, it is different. I got back home and I couldn't stop thinking about those people. They didn't have any training, they didn't have any literature, they didn't have all kinds of stuff. And so I had an interpreter I could call. I called him on the phone. I called him. His name was Michael Lubinitsky. And I called him and I said, you know what? I just feel like God is not done with us. And he said, I feel the same way. So bang, we start planning. I go by myself this time. And again, it was just stuff set up everywhere. And so we went several times. trained people, did small group ministry, taught them how to do that, taught them how to plant churches. Because God had prepared it. We had a group larger than ours. They were probably a couple hundred miles away from us. They got there, got in trouble on the first day, never got to do anything. They ended up being flown back to Moscow. They were just sitting there waiting for 2 weeks while we were out here doing what we were doing. So you don't know. But here's the second one. Right here. I'm standing in line at an associational meeting waiting on supper. We're at Corinth. And a guy named Ronnie Cox was in line with me, and we're talking, and he's telling me about how they started apartment ministry at Providence Church over here, and what happened, and how people got saved, and after he talked to me for about 30 minutes, a long line, right there talking, and there was a lady standing right behind us, and she said, my mother was one of those ladies. And I thought, we can do that. We can do it. And I didn't know anything. Me and Marty drove over here. He told me to stay in the car. He got out and visited for a little bit with Desika. And after that, I got to go talk to her. Ronnie told me to get some people. I didn't know this till later. He told us to get some people together, and we're going to prayer walk these apartments. For what, 7 weeks? He says, just do it. Just do the plan. He thought we would have, he's used to 5 or 6 people. We had 26. We talked about it here, talked about the possibilities, and when he came, I think we were in the youth room, Tyler. And we were packed out of here. Now watch this. We were trying to do this apartment, and there was a set of apartments down the road. And guess what? That door just shut on us. Just like Asia. It just shut. Nothing we can do about it. So now we got 26 people on a prayer walk. So we did it instead of one night a week, we did it 2 nights a week. We broke our group into 2. We had a Monday night group and a Tuesday night group, and we prayer walked. And the first person that we baptized out of that apartment complex was the manager, Desika Copeland. I want to tell you something. And Desika became our leader. She opened everything up for us like we couldn't have dreamed we'd have had the access that we've had over there these years. Hey, if God is talking to you about something, then God is God, and you know it's God, brush all the worry and all that stuff out of the way, because God is working to make it happen. It's not on you, it's on God. That may be to go talk to your neighbor across the street or something, but if God is really working on you, then God is really working over there. And He'll make it work. Here's the deal. Some places we can go, and there's some places we can't go. But we need to do everything we can to send other people who could go where we can't go. Let me share something with if I got my numbers here. We have 3,667 as of this year missionaries on foreign soil, international missions. You know what? This Lottie Moon Christmas offering that we do will be half of our mission budget for a year, and that's what supports these people. Half of it comes out of the cooperative program, where a percentage of our money that we give her all the time goes to that, but half of it is this. So I can't tell you how important it is that we give into this offering, because this is what keeps these people having to come back over here and beg Christians to give them enough money to go back and be missionaries. We raise the money we support the missionaries, and they stay on the field. So, we have got North American missionaries. We've got 5,526. Andy Armstrong offers part of that. Those people planted last year 691 new churches in North America. But there's just lots and lots and lots of work to do. I can remember 30 years ago, they started talking about how the population was, was just going to explode and what it was going to mean. I had no idea. No idea. We've got 7 billion people on this planet. And growing every day, every day, every day, every day, every day, every day. And every one of them needs to hear the gospel. So we can go and do what we can do. And then we can send. Listen, everybody didn't go with Paul, but there was a lot of people who had to send Paul. They helped him to go and travel. He got off and they helped him. And so we ask that of y'all too. Let me read one last verse. This is Acts 1:8. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, and all Judea and Samaria, and to the end of the earth. We're still responsible for the end of the earth. All of us. We know Jesus. We're responsible for all those folks who don't know Jesus. We need to be thinking about them and how we get them the gospel. And you be sure you know what the gospel is and you believe it. You be certain that your life has been transformed and you know Jesus and you know that you know Him. And when we know Him, then it becomes a natural thing to think about the others that don't know Him, who don't have what we have. Hey, you want to receive the gift? For you that didn't get saved so young, you can't remember. Think about what life was like for 2 or 3 days before you got saved. Think about the difference, how your life changed. The world needs that. Let's pray. Father, we thank you that you give us opportunity to preach. You give us opportunity to think about your tremendous work and how you work. Help us to be sensitive to your voice and your call, to go where you want us to go. Help us to sacrifice and give that others can hear. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.